Hello and welcome to the 21-22 school year. Today we are presenting our Site Coordinator training for the assessment of newly identified EL students. We appreciate your time and attention to this important assessment. The Assessment Services team is led by Dr. Erica Simmons. Dr. Simmons is in her second year here at Assessment Services. Her leadership brings a new perspective to assessment and data analysis. Her site experience has provided new direction and outlook to our training and professional development. Many of our returning coordinators know how valuable and important training is regarding assessment. And last year we implemented the always available Zoom room to be able to assist staff face-to-face during the various testing windows. Look at the assessment staff emails to find our personal Zoom room numbers and join anytime. If the window is not active, an email will be sent to our staff and we will log in and email you as soon as possible. This method has allowed us to provide a more hands-on training approach by being able to demonstrate or visualize solutions. For new Site ELPAC coordinators and even returning staff, it is important that we review the who, what, where, and when for the initial ELPAC. The next few slides will be discussing the purpose, components, timelines, and eligibility, all specific to the initial ELPAC. The English Language Proficiency Assessment for California ELPAC is California's assessment system that is used to determine the English language proficiency of students whose primary language is not English. The ELPAC is aligned with the 2012 California English Language Development Standards and assesses 4 domains: listening, speaking, reading, and writing. The initial ELPAC is used to identify students as being either an English learner or fluent in English. It is administered only once during a student's time in the California public school system, based on the results of the home language survey. The locally scored and initial ELPAC will be the official score. An additional factor in administering assessment to our EL population is it is a state and federal mandate that public schools administer this proficiency to determine the English capability of its new students. What does the initial ELPAC comprise of? More buzzwords to note in regards to the ELPAC. Domains and task types. Domains are the 4 primary assessment categories: listening, speaking, reading, and writing. Within each of these domains, there are a variety of tasks that align with the state standards, such as listening to a short exchange, supporting an opinion, read and choose a sentence, or write a story together with scaffolding. The initial ELPAC is administered within the first 30 days of a student's first enrollment in California public schools. This window is active all year. However, for San Diego Unified, this timeline begins August 30th and ends June 14th. The CDE dates are July 6th through June 30th due to the variety of opening and closing dates for schools. Frequently throughout this presentation, you will see San Diego Unified School dates and CDE dates. This is to point out these variations. Who is required to take the initial ELPAC? All newly enrolled students in grades TK through 12 who have never been tested with the ELPAC or CELT that have a language other than English indicated on their home language survey for questions 1, 2, or 4. New this year, actually last year, are our pre-K students that turn 5 during this school year. These students appear on your eligibility roster all year long as they are auto-enrolled from the pre-K state school into our San Diego Unified Power School system. Understanding the data flow between enrollment and testing system is very important as well. Staff are familiar with our student system, Power School. But did you know that that data is uploaded into the California Student Database System called CalPADS, then again uploaded into the Test Operations Management System, and back down again? This important exchange of information is highly valuable, as it is important to understand that sites are unable to assess students until this back and forth data exchange is complete. This process can take anywhere from 1 to 5 days depending on holidays and other factors. Site ELPAC coordinators are responsible for ensuring the site is using appropriate personnel to assess our students. Test examiners must be an active employee of the district. They must have signed test security affidavits from 21-22. They must be proficient in English and have a complete command of pronunciation, intonation, and fluency. They must have received training in the calibration and scoring of the ELPAC found in Moodle. If they will be administering speaking, they must receive their certificates of completion as well. So, what's new for the 21-22 initial ELPAC? There have been some minor updates and changes to the initial ELPAC. This year, if you have pupils that require a paper pencil assessment written into the IEP, you must contact the lead LEA coordinator for ELPAC, Ann Runge, and provide proof from the IEP. This process can take some time, so please notify the Assessment Services Office in a timely manner to ensure compliance. The second update from last year is the use of the change from in-person only to utilizing the in-person or remote feature this year. So whatever platform you are actually assessing under, so if you are in person, please use the in-person. If you are testing remotely, please use the remote hybrid button. The initial summative ELPAC are completely online administrations. There are no access to the testing platform without valid SSID numbers issued to students. This can take several days to obtain from the system in CalPADS, so please do not wait to enter student enrollment records and home language surveys to ensure timely assessment of our students. The secure browser we've been working with over the past year, and the initial is being used with the built-in secure browser technology. All students use the web-based student interface for the initial ELPAC. For our summative, as long as the student has a current SDUSD issued device, they will also access secure browsers. Our proposed timeline for the future of the alternative ELPAC. Many of you last year were getting a lot of emails in early September, October about being trained for the alternate ELPAC. Alternate ELPAC is designed for our students with severe cognitive disabilities. And these students require a different mode of assessment. They created the alternate ELPAC. In previous years, we called it the ELA, which is the English Language Alternate Assessment. The acronym for ELA, or Alt ELPAC, is what we call that. There are the same two components of ELPAC, your initial and your summative. Starting November of 2021, we are conducting the postponed operational field test for the summative alternative ELPAC. What this means to sites is if you have a newly identified student who has an IEP with severe cognitive disabilities, you will need to administer or continue to administer the paper pencil initial alternate ELPAC from the Special Education Central Office. Anybody who has questions about that, please reach out to arungi@sandy.net for further explanation. Again, if you have students with severe cognitive disabilities with an active IEP that need an alternate assessment to identify them as English learners, please understand that is still a paper pencil process from Special Ed Central Office. Starting in July of next year, there will be the initial alternate ELPAC on the computer. And in a year from next February, so there's a, this is a look into the future. A year from February, which is February 2023, the operational summative alternate ELPAC will be live. It's a lot, so we will walk you through step by step, and we will send out a lot of information for you. So now we're going to get into how to prepare for the initial ELPAC. Again, we go through test security, receipt of any materials, which is really a TK2 function, any required trainings for you and your staff, and other accessibility resources. Test security is a site coordinator's #1 responsibility. It is extremely vital that we all understand with electronic signatures on everything. Please take this seriously. Take a moment, read through the test security before you accept and sign, because what you are actually accepting and signing is very important information, and understanding that your electronic tracing of paperwork of the assessment is just as important as the paper versions. So it is a bit new process. The test examiners and site coordinators complete the online security forms the first time they log into the test operation system. So if you're logging in August, you're going to complete this process. It's good for the whole year. So you won't need to continually do this affidavits as we've had to do in years past. So that's really good news. And these forms are all maintained online. So you don't have to submit paper copies. You don't have to make copies and hand them out. And you can run a list of signed affidavits for your site from the TOMS system. So even though the forms are online, the conditions listed on the affidavit must be reviewed with all staff before they have access to these materials, including TOMS and the DFAs. They again outline not divulging contents of the test. Don't take screenshots of your screen and send that. That is a violation of security protocols. When communicating regarding students, please only use an SSID. Do not use a child's name. When we use children's names, it becomes a breach of security. If you only use their SSID, your security confidentiality is minimized. So making sure that your staff reviews this is very important. So you do have staff on site who have access to areas during the testing window that could be a security breach or security violation. And in order to accommodate that and allow them to continue with their job, they have the affidavits for non-TOMS users. It's under the elpac.org, under test administration, under security. There is a link to the affidavits for non-TOMS users. So that will continue for the 2021-22 ELPAC administration. The process to complete and submit the ELPAC affidavit with the roles that do not require access to TOMS, such as your BSS, custodial, and clerical staff. They must be completed, and the role of the coordinator is to make sure those people have those non-TOM users' affidavits on file. So some of the conditions on the security affidavit include not divulging the contents of the test materials. It seems simple, but it's amazing how often we do that without truly being aware we've done that. We permit only eligible students who are testing and staff who have signed a security affidavit to be in the room during test administration, which means these tests are secure. You can't get up and walk away and then come back in a room full of students. Collect and account for all testing materials following each session. This is really applicable to our TK2 students. And do not review any questions, passages, or other items with pupils or any other people. Actively supervising the pupils throughout the testing session. And please do not copy, share, or photograph test book, computers, or questions. For the sites with TK students that will have test booklets, all materials, including any printed DFAs, must be kept in a locked, secure area before and after testing. Please create a system for checking in and out materials to test examiners. Make sure to count the booklets and materials as they come in and out. Item number 3 that you sign from the security agreement. Except during the administration of the tests, I will keep the test materials in a securely locked room which can be accessed only with a key or key card and, when possible, in a locked storage cabinet within that room. With the advancement of technology, DFAs, which are our directions for administration, can be downloaded from the TOMS test administration system, which means that they have an electronic capture of the DFAs. When you are done with your directions for administration, you should delete your cache or clear your cache from your computer and empty your recycle bin to ensure that you are not retaining secure information on your computer, which is an unsecure device. Always use your signs so people do know that you're testing. We've created these. They're on the Assessment Services web pages under the different testing situations. Unauthorized electronic devices may not be used at any time during the testing session. This applies obviously to in-person testing, but also to our remote testing. Oftentimes you can see students on screen looking down, looking away from their computer, down, talking to someone, any of that kind of stuff that might indicate a less than secure environment from them using cell phones, smartphone, watches, or any other unauthorized electronic device. Cell phones should be turned off and put away during test administration. And remember, especially when you're in a Zoom or you're doing a remote administration, things on the walls behind you in your site view are should be covered, should be taken down, should try to make a plain background if you can. Use the green screen feature if you're doing remote administration. Testing irregularities and security breaches. These are items that we need to report using the STAIRS system, and a STAIRS system is a reporting mechanism in the TOMS reporting system that reports irregularities and security breaches. These irregularities are not limited to, but there's some of these, are cheating by students, failing to follow the test administration directions, coaching students, writing on the answer book that would result in transcribing a new document. We actually received a lot of books last year that had ink written in the test booklets. The paper pencil writing booklets for TK2 must be in a number 2 pencil in order to be valid. And that still continues even with the initial. Leaving instructional materials on the walls or behind you on screen, any missing test materials, or allowing students to take the test out of a designated testing area, which means like they go to the restroom and take their test with them. That is not an acceptable practice and would be considered a security breach. All suspected and or confirmed testing irregularities or breaches in security must be reported in TOMS. You would be including the following information in your report. A STAIRS report is filed by domain. So if this was more than one domain involved, you would need to do a report for each of those domains. the grade span or spans that were involved, the number of students and staff involved, including SSID numbers. So one thing in assessment that you will hear often is SSID. The SSID is the 10-digit number issued by the California Department of Ed to all California students. It's a number that follows them if they move district to district within the state. You also have a local ID number, which is approximately 6 digits for San Diego Unified. So you will again hear a lot of reference to SSID numbers. Then you will need to describe the incident in detail and any actions taken by staff to correct the incidents and any protocols that are put in place to ensure these accidents do not happen in the future at the site. STAIRS reporting is an online process. Coordinators can only identify one domain per submittal, which means you can have 6 students on one report, but it would only be for reading. Coordinators must file a separate incident for each domain, and the incidents cannot be combined, such as one child was cheating, one child took the test to the restroom. Those would all be separate STAIRS processes. Draft STAIRS reports should be deleted. If you are not submitting them, please go through and delete them. There's reports in TOMS that you can run to see all the draft reports in STAIRS. Go through occasionally and delete those. Pending STAIR cases for initial ELPAC must be fully resolved in order for the student to be eligible to take the summative in February. So that's important. So basically, your child has to be completed through the entire ELPAC process in order to be eligible to take the summative process. TK2 writing booklets that have filed as STAIRS, you must note if you're submitting the booklet, which we do not submit for the initial, but it's a good practice. Check and fill out the box irregularity on the back of the booklet. So receiving materials, how are you going to get these materials, these mysterious materials I keep talking to you about? The TK2 testing booklets. I run a report and I will be sending a communication to sites that need to come and pick up materials. If you need to order any materials for your site directly, please email me, arungi@sandy.net, with the number of booklets that you would need. Again, that's TK2 only, and you'll be receiving your booklets in the beginning of September, very shortly actually. Next, we're going to take a look at the different types of required training for Site ELPAC coordinators, principals, enrollment staff, and test examiners. There are 2 types of training currently offered. Site Coordinator Essentials training that you are attending or watching right now, which covers the logistics of coordinating initial ELPAC, material, test security, TOM system, and that is again provided by Assessment Services, and it is an online video-paced, self-paced program. The second one is through Moodle Examiner Training. It's for the administration and scoring of the initial ELPAC. You need an access key in order to access the module for examiner resources. This has typically been introduced to you by the Office of Language Acquisition in August and September, and that is delivered through a Google Messenger system. Training for your site staff, reminding once again that you would always review your security affidavits and security protocols with any staff who are going to have access to the secure test materials, which are any directions for administration and the specifically test booklets for TK through 2. You want to ensure test examiners have access to these directions for administration and also ensure that they are confident in their scoring and the rubric in the Moodle training platform. Comprehensive training on accessibility and accessibility's tools and resources are separate from this training. Although we will be discussing some of the aspects of it, the in-depth training is in another module. It is located on the internal portal of the Assessment Services website under Accessibility. This is a highly recommended training for all site administrators and site test coordinators. It is highly valuable for all teachers with students assigned. One of the items this covers is what is the purpose of assessment and accessibility of assessment? To provide students an equal opportunity to demonstrate what they know and what they can do. So what's new in accessibility? Well, LEAs have encountered issues when students' IEP test settings change during the testing windows. And we are not able to change or reassign accommodations if the student started testing without an IEP. We currently are able to do that now. So when they're doing a test in the domain, say reading, and they on one day and they hold their IEP and determine in the next week that that child needs accommodations, and you're not going to test them for another week on listening, those accommodations can be entered and updated for the student. So a reset appeal can be used if an accommodation change is needed on a test that a student has already started. What are the types of accessibility resources available in ELPAC? Again, this has gone over in depth with examples in our accessibility training, but universal tools are considered to be tools that are available to all students based on a student preference and selection. So large mouse pointers. Everybody can have those. Designated supports are available to all students who can benefit from them and typically or must be indicated by the educator or a group of educators. And again, all accommodations should be something the student is already using on a day-to-day basis in the current classroom. Accommodations are much more specific. They are based on the student's IEP or Section 504 plan. Changes in any procedures or materials that increase the equitability of access during testing. So we have what we consider and have always called the bento box. And the bento box will break down your resources for the different students. And I like to think of this as the top and the bottom. So the top section is for all students, and the blue and lighter blue colors are broken down into embedded and non-embedded. So the universal tools, any student, anywhere, no worries. Embedded, breaks, not a problem. Expandable items, not a problem. Highlighter, using a highlighter. Scratch paper, not a problem. What's not embedded? Breaks. Highlighters that they physically need for any purpose. Oral clarification, scratch paper, again. So as you can see, those tools are things that they would probably use in the regular classroom day. Designated supports, pause and replay, or making a mouse pointer a different color or larger. And those are probably the absolute most common designated supports used, especially at an elementary level. And again, highly recommend at least one person at every site knowing about these and how they're inputted into the TOM system for the students to be able to use. Again, embedded and not embedded. American Sign Language, not embedded. Mouse pointer size, embedded. Okay, so then the bottom section, the lighter buff colored accommodations. All of these, anything under that line must be detailed in the IEP or Section 504. You have accommodations, embedded, American Sign Language, audio transcript, Braille, closed captioning. All of those are accommodations that are embedded, and then you have your unlisted resources. Unlisted resources is anything that would not be on this list, and we have to submit a formal request on behalf of the student, and that is done through the Assessment Services Office. It also needs to be done 10 days prior to testing. Domain exemptions are very different. Domain exemptions, basically, as we spoke earlier, you have 4 domains: reading, writing, listening, and speaking. You can exempt a student from 1 domain. That would allow a student not to take that particular domain. If there are no available resources or unlisted resources that provide the student the proper access to that domain. So again, questions in regards to accessibility resources should be directed to us via email or checking out the accessibility training. We also would like to cover, because Initial also addresses our students with disabilities, we would like to discuss the alternate assessment for the Initial ELPAC. So the English Language Alternate Assessment is known as the ELA, and it is an alternative to the ELPAC. Currently, students that are newly identified to require the ELPAC will be given the Initial ELA. It is a paper pencil assessment. It is obtained through the Special Education Central Office. It's also a training that must be attended to on safe schools. We're going to get into a little bit more on the domain exemptions, and that's the IEP or Section 504 team may decide to exempt a student from a particular domain if there are no available resources or unlisted resources that provide the student access to that domain. So again, you cannot just decide that you're not going to test a child in a domain. It must be written in the student's IEP or 504 plan. You are able to do an amendment to the IEP without convening a full meeting in regards to changes of this type to the IEP. So when the student's IEP or 504 plan specify that the student has a disability for which there are no appropriate accommodations in one or more of the domains, the student shall be assessed in the remaining domains in which it is possible to assess that student. So that's that time that you would utilize the domain exemption in TOMS. And again, I'd like to reiterate that it must be specified what domain will be exempted and the reason it will be exempted in the IEP in order to be properly documented. So again, questions on any of the accessibility resources can be directed to us via email or attending the training on accessibility. So prepping for the Initial ELPAC. We've covered a lot, and I'm hoping that as this is a recorded training, that you will reach out to us and email us at arunge@sandy.net for any questions that you may have. So what is the process? Right now, the next section is the test administration, scoring of it without going into actually the calibration of scoring, and the TOMS system and the local scoring tools that you will be utilizing for Initial. There is a 30-day timeline for the Initial ELPAC process, and that is from day one that the student first enrolls or attends. So if they enroll on the 30th, if they enroll on the on the 20th, but school doesn't start till the 30th. The timeline for this year starts on August 30th. And then you have to test the student, score the test, enter the scores, print out the student score reports and the parent letter, and make sure that those are all taken care of before day 30. DEI is an acronym for the Data Entry Interface, and SSR is the acronym for a Student Score Report. So test administration, what's that look like? The ELPAC is not timed per se. The estimated times do not include any of the reading of the instructions, and the times can be shorter if the student exits at any stopping markers. So although we have estimated times, they're averages, and they vary greatly in each situation, even grade level to grade level. So listening, reading, and writing in TK to 1 are individually administered. I'd like to just reiterate that. Grade 2, you can do one proctor for every 10 students for writing only. In grades 3 through 12, you would have one proctor for every 20 students. Proctors are staff that have signed a non-TOMS security agreement and will rotate throughout the room or environment to ensure the test security. So again, speaking grades TK through 12 are individually administered. We also have the ability to do in-person, which is the guides for the proctor, or remote. When you're administering the initial ELPAC, it's very important to understand our stopping markers. Stopping markers allow the test examiner to stop testing the student if there have been no responses or correct responses up until that point. The stopping markers are domain specific and allowed for individual test administration only and should not be used if administering in a group. Stopping markers are indicated in your examiner manuals or directions for administration with the note symbol. If after reaching a stopping marker within a domain, there is no need to continue to bubble an answer booklet for that domain. And that is for specifically to our TK2 group. When you're administering the listening domain, these are specific to, there's instructions specific to listening. Grades TK through 2, the test examiner reads the test items for the listening sections. And grades 3 through 12, the audio is streamed via TOMS for the listening. Again, with the audio computerized version of initial ELPAC, many items are now read from the computer. This next section is about the speaking domain of the initial, and the speaking section is administered individually. For grades 3 through 12, the last task is accessed and played via TOMS. For the reading domain, it is critical that test examiners read aloud only the boldface say instructions. If you are utilizing the remote feature, this is done for you. The writing domain in each grade and grade span is based on task types and use different rubrics. K and 1 are done with hand-over-hand help by the test examiner. Others are more independent. So when you get to the scoring of the initial ELPAC, it's done locally by trained, qualified personnel. These are the people who have attended the Moodle scoring and calibration for speaking and writing in Moodle, and they actually have this certification. That means they have passed all of the certification quizzes in order to be able to score the speaking and writing. Listening and reading test types have multiple choice questions and they are scored in TOMS. The speaking and writing task types have constructed response questions that are scored using rubrics and entered into the DEI. These rubrics are gone over in great detail in Moodle. The speaking is scored live during testing. The writing is scored after testing and entered into either the DEI or the THSS. So the computer-based scoring matrix is as follows. Grades K through 12 listening are scored by the TOMS system. As you can see here in the upper left-hand box. So for listening all the way down, TOMS will score listening and reading. Speaking at the different grade levels is done through the DEI entry. Writing is where it gets different. DEI is used for grades TK through 2. The THH system is used from grades 3 through 12. Scoring the initial ELPAC writing domain. When scoring the writing tasks, task examiners must use the appropriate rubrics. Fill in the answer bubble of the corresponding score for each question on the answer book where applicable, and record the score for each question in the THSS for grades 3 through 12. In the system, on the directions for administration, those directions have these forms that you would be utilizing, and you would make copies of them in order to keep records for each of the students that you score for speaking and writing. So when scoring the speaking test, examiners must use the appropriate rubrics again and score during testing. Total the points scored for each task type and record those totals on the student's score sheet to be entered into the DEI. The score sheets for speaking are at the end of the DFAs. So they are at the back of the DFAs, or if you are using a TK2 booklet, I believe they are also there on the back page. So keep those score sheets. What I tell people is you keep the score sheets in the student's EL container until the next year, or you may toss them after this child enters the 4th grade and you are sure those scores are in correctly the assessment system. That brings us to the assessment system, also known as TOMS, the Test Operation Management System for ELPAC. TOMS is a secure website that permits site coordinators and test examiners to perform several tasks for the ELPAC test administration. There are certain technology requirements all staff accessing TOMS should have. Newer computers are always the most beneficial, and one of the things that you're looking for is Google Chrome level 85 and above, Safari 9 plus and above, or Firefox 60 plus and above. I have noticed over the last 3 years that the best performance has been through Chrome. So let's talk about the different roles that you can assign in TOMS. Okay, the site coordinator has access to adding, editing, and deleting test examiners in their site, accessing audio modules, accessing the DEI, THSS, and be able to run their site level reports. There should only be 1 or 2 site coordinators at the most for each school site. Your test examiners should be the most used category of a user role at your site, and they will have access to any audio modules that they need and any scoring modules that they need. Your data entry staff, should you require that, larger sites will often have that. They will do all of the data entry of the DEI, THS, so your score sheets could be turned into them and they could do the data entry for that. with the more computerized versions, it's less and less occurring that you have a data entry feature. All TOMS user accounts are removed every June. Actually, that's the time it took place in just last week in August. And they say that they're activated for 2 years, but San Diego Unified only issues access on an annual basis due to high volume turnover. User roles for ELPAC as a site coordinator. They're entered into TOMS by assessment services based on the principal's designation form, which is, we call it the My Responsibilities. There's a circular that goes out and an email that went out in August when the principals returned, asking them to designate their ELPAC and CASP site test coordinators. We utilized those rosters to add the site coordinators in an upload. Then the site coordinators add test examiners and data entry as they are assigned at their site. So how do you access this TOMS we keep referring to? Everything that we do starts with elpac.org, so www.elpac.org. The first blue button underneath this gray bar area is TOMS. TOMS is the Test Operation Management System. You will hear me reference that often. The directions for this also are on our website, so when you're accessing TOMS, you can access it for either CASP or for ELPAC, or if you're the coordinator for both, you'll see both. So your email is your username, and then it says here, if you are a first-time user, request one now. You will have gotten an email saying that I set you up as a user, and that's the button you hit the first time out every year. Once you have successfully activated your account and logged in, you will see that you have an option to select your role as a site coordinator. At either, if you have both roles, CASP and ELPAC, it will give you both options. So select your ELPAC, and then it will bring you to the regular ELPAC TOMS window, which has a blue menu bar and a gray menu bar. The blue menu bar to add a user would use the User tab, as shown here on the screen circled. And the second item in the gray menu bar would be to utilize the Add feature shown here. Next, we're going to demonstrate reports. When you need to access your initial report eligibility roster in TOMS, you are logged in. In the blue menu bar, you select the Report tab all the way at the far end, and then you go to Initial ELPAC Reports. You often have to scroll down to get to your Initial ELPAC Eligibility Student Eligibility Report. Apologize for that being so difficult for me to say. Again, we do have a job aid for this, so feel free to search it out on our website and print it out. It does help. But again, you're at Reports, and then you will do your Initial ELPAC Eligibility Report, and you make sure that your organization, we do have LEA coordinators that coordinate for more than one, not LEA coordinators, Site ELPAC coordinators that coordinate for more than one site. So be sure if you have a drop down that you have the correct organization selected. And an Excel spreadsheet will be generated with your list of students who have a EL status or ELAS status of TBD. Please visually check that list and make sure that it also has TBD and no other status. Any other status should be reported to arungi@sandy.net. Next, we will be discussing the data entry user face. There's an actual full guide that you can go to print out that will give you the step-by-step directions, and that is at the elpac.org under User Guides. So we will also place that link on the Assessment Services Initial ELPAC webpage. Changes from previous years. What was once known as a local scoring tool is no longer in existence. It is a data entry interface or the teacher hand scoring system. The DEI is entry for TK2 speaking, and the THSS is Initial ELPAC writing, items grades 3 through 12. So the THSS is the teacher hand scoring system. You can find the data entry mechanism on your elpac.org website. The third button down titled Data Entry Interface and Teacher Hand Scoring System. You will have two options here on which module you wish to enter, the DEI or the THSS. So being able to follow this grade span by grade span again, your listening and reading is in the system, so you do not need to worry about that. The speaking you need to enter into the DEI. Your writing is for THSS 3 through 12. Student score reports. At the end of your assessment and your scoring and the finalization of the initial ELPAC, you will know whether the student is an English only or some other classification. Their overall performance level and score will be printed on a score report. You utilize the student score report under Reports options in the TOMS system. Student score reports must be printed from TOMS and sent to the parent's home with the required parent notification letter found on the OLA website. That letter and results must be mailed to the parent within 30 days of enrollment. Failure to do so is a compliance violation. There is a required parent letter that is issued from the Office of Language Acquisition. That's where you will find that initial ELPAC score notification letter. It also can be downloaded from the Assessment Services webpage. We will make sure that is up to date for you. So schools, it is your obligation as the test site coordinator to make sure you print out the SSR and send the parent notification letter. Please note the date that you send it and make sure you make that note in the EL container. Again, to review your timeline, the student, let's say the student enrolls prior to, we have the enrollment paperwork prior to the August 30th. August 30th is the first date of actual attendance and enrollment. So for the start of the school year, it's a little different. If the student comes after Labor Day on September 8th and they start that day, that's their first date. That's when your clock for 30 days starts to run. So in that 30-day timeline, you need to test the student, score the results, enter those scores in the DEI, print out the SSR and the parent notification letter, and have those in the mail within the 30 days. 20 days is the goal. That way the student is getting their services and their proper placement in that timeline. So, questions about the initial ELPAC. We always encourage you to email us, join our Zoom rooms. The email again is arungi@sandy.net. What are our post tasks for initial ELPAC? Beautifully, the really nice thing about a computerized initial ELPAC is there isn't a lot to do afterwards. So this part should go really quickly. Any of the unused initial ELPAC answer books. After testing, what I recommend people do is go ahead and keep that booklet in the student's EL container until June. And then you take it out and you can keep the score sheet and securely destroy your answer document. So you're only going to secure on-site unused answer books until you are issued the request to securely destroy. Okay, any questions on the post-test tasks? Again, please watch for emails from arungi@sandy.net in regards to all of the different processes that we are discussing today. My communications do come out in tip of the weeks, and they come out as I am notified of certain things that I might have failed to mention during this training. So what are the resources that you have at your disposal? How are you going to get help when you really need it? One of the valuable resources that are out there is the elpac.org website. Please understand the acronym LEA is the Local Education Area. An LEA coordinator is myself or staff at the Assessment Services Office. Site coordinators are at the local site level. So an LEA is the staff. When it says help for LEA ELPAC coordinators, that means the district level. So if you need help and you're not finding it in print at this elpac.org website, please do not call or email any of these people. Please use my local Zoom room or look up in any of these under test administration or training. But I really encourage you just to shoot me an email because I might have a very quick answer that will require a lot less of your time. Once again, we encourage you to go to the Assessment Services webpage under the Staff Portal. You do need to log in to access documents within our website. Because they do often contain secure data, we do recommend that you are logged in order to see and access the training and information that we share with you. I'm going to leave this up for just a few minutes for your information. You have our Assessment Services General Office number at 7065. Erica can be located or reached most days as well as I can, and we are all here to support you. If you have questions regarding the specific implementation of instruction regarding your students with English language needs, please reach out to the Office of Language Acquisition at 619-725-7264. I'd really like to thank you for your time today. We appreciate you being here, and hopefully you find this video helpful and able to be reviewed at your leisure and when you need to go back and refer to a refresher. Have a great day.